I know you, he whispered, and my champagne glass nearly slipped from my trembling fingers. The groom's father stood 3 feet from me at my son's wedding reception, close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. His eyes held the cold recognition of someone who had waited decades for this exact moment, who had nursed his rage like a dying fire. My name is Diane, and I had spent 40 years burying a secret about to resurface in front of everyone I loved. What would happen to my family if the truth emerged tonight? Would my husband still hold my hand after learning who I really was? Would my son still call me Mom? My husband chatted near the bar, his booming laugh carrying across the reception. He was telling the story about how we met, completely oblivious to the earthquake building beneath his feet. My son kissed his bride under strings of white lights. Everything I had protected for 4 decades hung by a thread, and this man's trembling hands held the scissors. 30 years ago, you testified in a courtroom, he continued, his voice low and deliberate. You destroyed my brother's life with your lies. He pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping, its edges worn from handling. There I was, walking out of a courthouse, head down, surrounded by reporters. The headline screamed, "Key witness seals murder conviction." This brittle piece of paper was proof, evidence of what I'd done, and he'd kept it for 30 years. You looked that jury in the eye and pointed at an innocent man, he continued, his fingers reverent on the clipping. And they believed you because you seemed so traumatized and credible. I remembered that day, with crystalline clarity, the prosecutor's hand on my shoulder, firm and possessive, steering me through the crowd. The flash of cameras like gunfire. The weight of what I had just done crushing my chest until I couldn't breathe. The way I'd vomited in the courthouse bathroom afterward, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't turn on the faucet. The young woman in that photo looked terrified, which was good because she was supposed to look like a traumatized witness. What the cameras hadn't captured was that she was terrified of the right things for all the wrong reasons. The photographer called for family photos, her voice cheerful and oblivious, cutting through the tension. I had 20 minutes before cake cutting, before my husband noticed something terribly wrong, before this man decided whether to detonate my entire life in front of everyone we knew, before my son's perfect day became the day his mother's lies finally caught up with her. The tent smelled like gardenias and expensive catering. The band was setting up for the first dance. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, except for the bomb ticking in my chest. What do you want? I forced steadiness into my voice, the same steadiness I'd used on the witness stand all those years ago. The truth. He folded the clipping with careful precision, his fingers reverent as they creased the yellowed paper. My brother died in that prison 3 years ago, innocent, alone, without his daughter, without his life, without anything he should have had. You knew it the whole time. You knew and you let him rot. I did know it. That knowledge haunted me for 3 decades, lurking in quiet moments, in the space between sleep and waking, in the mirror every morning when I brushed my teeth and avoided my own eyes. I had seen something that night, something proving another man committed the crime, but the prosecutor threatened my family, told me what happened to witnesses who changed their stories, who suddenly remembered things differently, showed me photos of other witnesses who'd gotten scared, who'd ended up in accidents, in hospital beds, in graves. I was 27 years old with a 2-year-old son at home, and I was terrified of becoming a target myself, terrified of coming home to find my house on fire, my baby gone, my life destroyed. So I destroyed someone else's instead. My son appeared beside me, grinning, completely unaware of the chasm opening beneath our feet. Mom, Dad's looking for you. Cake time in 10 minutes. You okay? You look pale. I smiled at him. This man who had no idea his mother helped send an innocent person to die behind bars, who thought he'd been raised by someone honorable and good, just emotional, sweetheart. Be right there. The groom's father watched my son walk away, his jaw working. Nice kid. Real shame if he found out who his mother really is. If everyone here knew what kind of person raised that boy, what it would do to him. Learning his whole life was built on a lie. You wouldn't dare ruin his wedding day. Watch me. He patted his jacket pocket, and I heard the crinkle of paper, multiple sheets. I have copies, 20 of them. Enough for every table tonight. Your husband's table, your son's table, his new in-laws' table. Unless you announce what you did right now, right here, let my brother's name finally be cleared. Let everyone see you for what you really are. A woman I'd known for 15 years walked past, waving cheerfully. I waved back, my smile frozen in place. How many of these people would look at me the same way after tonight? How many friendships would survive the truth? Guests drifted toward the dance floor. The band started playing something slow and romantic, the kind of song that makes people think about forever and promises and happily ever after. My husband chatted near the bar, laughing at someone's joke about golf handicaps. He had no idea an earthquake was about to swallow our family whole, to crack open the foundation of our marriage and expose the rot underneath. I grabbed the man's arm, my fingers digging into his suit jacket. "Come with me, now away from the crowd." I pulled him toward the garden path that wound behind the tent, past the rose bushes and the little fountain that gurgled mindlessly. The music faded slightly. We were still in view of the tent, but far enough that no one could hear us over the celebration. "There's something you don't know about that night," I said, my mind racing, calculating possibilities and angles and ways out of this trap. He stopped walking. His eyes narrowed with suspicion, and I could see him tensing, preparing for another lie, another manipulation. I kept evidence. The prosecutor took my statement, made me write it out, sign it, but I made a copy beforehand. My original notes about what I really saw. The lie came easily, after 30 years of practice, after 40 years of becoming someone I didn't recognize. "It proves your brother was framed by the detective who handled the case. Detective Harold Brennan." His expression flickered, doubt warring with hope, fury competing for dominance with something that looked like desperate, fragile faith that maybe, possibly, his brother's death might mean something. "Give it to me, now." That detective is now a federal judge. He's here tonight, at table 7, guest of my husband's law firm. I pointed toward the tent, where the tables were visible through the gauzy fabric. He's the one who pressured me, who threatened me, who made me testify the way I did. His head whipped toward the tent, scanning the tables frantically. Judge Harold Brennan sat buttering a roll, completely unaware his buried past was colliding with his present. The judge laughed at something the woman beside him said. He looked comfortable, untouchable, safe in the armor of his reputation and his position. "If you expose me now, Brennan will bury both of us," I said quietly, urgently. He spent 30 years building his reputation. Federal judge, connections everywhere. He won't let it crumble because of one old case. He'll deny everything. His lawyers will destroy our credibility. It'll be your word and mine against a federal judge. His hands trembled visibly now. The clipping shook between his fingers. "But if we approach him privately, record his confession, we get justice without destroying innocent people," I continued, pressing my advantage. "Your brother's name gets cleared. Brennan faces consequences. And my son doesn't have his wedding day ruined by learning his mother is a liar and a coward." "You are a liar and a coward. I know, but I'm trying to fix it. I've been trying for months." That part was true. Ever since I'd learned Kenneth Morrison died, the guilt had become unbearable. My son had nothing to do with this. Neither did yours. But Brennan manufactured evidence, threatened witnesses. Your brother wasn't his only victim. There were others, at least 4 cases I know about, where evidence disappeared or witnesses changed their stories under pressure. The cake was being wheeled out on a white cart decorated with sugar flowers. My husband waved from across the tent, tapping his watch. Time was running out. The photographer was arranging people for the cake-cutting photo. Any minute now they'd call for me. 5 minutes, I said firmly, desperately. After cake-cutting, we confront Brennan together. I'll record everything on my phone. We do this right, legal, with proof that holds up in court, or we both lose everything and your brother's name stays buried anyway. His daughter never gets justice. The truth dies with your revenge. He looked at the clipping, then at the judge, then at my son kissing his bride beside the cake. The weight of the decision pressed down on both of us. This man had waited 30 years for this moment. He'd nursed his grief, kept it alive, planning for the day he'd make me pay. And now I was asking him to wait 5 more minutes, to trust me. Of all people. 5 minutes, he finally said, his voice raw. But if you run, if you warn him, if you try anything, every single guest gets a copy. Your husband, your son, his bride's parents, every person in that tent will know what you did. I'll stand on a chair and read it aloud, if I have to. I walked toward the cake, on legs like water. My husband materialized beside me, taking my hand. His touch felt foreign, like I was borrowing someone else's life. You okay? You're pale. And you're sweating. Just emotional. Our baby's married. The words felt hollow in my mouth, like I was reading lines in a play about someone else's life. He squeezed my hand. I know. I keep thinking about when he was little. Remember? When he used to climb into our bed during thunderstorms. I remember. I remembered everything. Every moment I'd stolen by lying, every bedtime story I'd read while carrying this secret, every time I told him to be honest and kind while being neither myself. The knife slid through white frosting. Applause erupted. Flash photography lit the tent like the lightning on that night 30 years ago when I'd seen a murder and chosen to lie about it. Then Judge Brennan rose from table 7, walking toward the microphone with a wine glass in his hand. He was going to give a toast. In front of 200 witnesses, he was going to stand up and speak, and suddenly, my 5 minutes evaporated into nothing. Our eyes met across the tent. Recognition flickered in his face first, then confusion, then something harder, fear. He knew exactly who I was. The prosecutor's office had shown him my photo before the trial, made sure he understood which witnesses were cooperating, which ones had been properly motivated. He'd probably carried my face in his memory for 30 years, just like I'd carried his threats. Excuse me, everyone, the judge announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet reception. Every head turned toward him. I'd like to say a few words about this beautiful couple. The groom's father moved forward from the garden entrance, hand reaching into his jacket. I could see the copies in there, glimpsed white paper edges. I had seconds to decide which truth would destroy fewer lives, which confession would leave the smallest crater. I stepped toward the microphone. Actually, Judge Brennan, my voice carried across the silent tent, and I watched him freeze mid-stride. I believe I should speak first. It's a mother's privilege. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd, but it sounded nervous now. People sensed something off. Every eye turned to me. My husband's confusion, as I left his side without explanation. My son's hopeful smile, thinking I was giving a maternal toast, one of those sweet speeches about watching him grow up. The judge's barely concealed panic as I took the microphone from his hand. His fingers were ice cold when they brushed mine. This was it. The moment. The crisis I'd been running from for 30 years, catching up to me in the worst possible place. 30 years ago, I began and watched the judge go pale, watched my husband's expression shift from confusion to alarm. I made a choice that changed several lives forever. The tent fell silent. Even the band stopped shuffling their sheet music. The catering staff froze with trays of champagne. The groom's father stood at the edge of the crowd, his hand still inside his jacket, waiting to see if I'd actually do it. I was asked to do something difficult, something that required courage. I wasn't sure I had. I looked at my son. I was 27 years old. I had a 2-year-old boy at home, and I was terrified. My husband moved closer, his lawyer instincts activating. He could sense blood in the water. Judge Brennan and I share a piece of history, don't we, Your Honor? The judge tried to smile, tried to play it off as some kind of joke, but his face had gone gray. He was trapped. If he denied it, I could expose everything. If he confirmed it, he opened himself to questions he couldn't answer. He was a federal judge. He'd sent dozens of people to prison over his career. How many of those convictions were built on lies? What kind of history? My husband asked. His voice had changed. Sharper now, alert. The kind that needs to be examined, I said carefully, picking my words. The kind where a young woman is pressured to say certain things in a courtroom, where a detective makes it very clear what happens to witnesses who don't cooperate, who tells her that her little boy might have an accident if she doesn't remember things the right way. The groom's father pulled out his phone, started recording. The judge saw it. His face went from gray to white. This is hardly the time or place, Brennan said, his voice tight. This is a wedding reception. This is wildly inappropriate. You're right. This is my son's wedding, which makes it the perfect time to stop lying. I turned to the crowd. How many of you believe people can change? That mistakes can be corrected, even decades later? That truth matters more than comfort. Murmurs rippled through the guests. Some looked confused, others intrigued. A few seemed to understand where this was going. My son stood up. Mom, what's going on? I testified in a murder trial 30 years ago. I said, my voice steady, now, steady, in a way it hadn't been on the witness stand. I said what I was told to say. I identified someone I wasn't sure about, and that person, Kenneth Morrison, died in prison 3 years ago. The tent erupted in whispers. The judge tried to leave, actually tried to walk away, but the groom's father blocked his path. You were the detective who handled that case, I said to Brennan. You were the one who showed me photos until I picked the right one, who reminded me what happened to witnesses who weren't helpful, who made sure I understood my 2-year-old son could become a target if I didn't cooperate, if I told the truth about what I really saw. This is slander, Brennan hissed. I'll sue you for every penny. Is it? The groom's father stepped forward, holding up the newspaper clipping. My brother died in prison, Kenneth Morrison, 22 years for a murder he didn't commit. And this woman knows who really did it, don't you? My son's face crumpled, all the joy drained out of it, replaced by confusion and betrayal. Mom, what is he talking about? This was the point of no return. The final crisis. I could retreat into denial, claim mental illness or confusion, let the judge's power crush us both. Or I could burn it all down and hope something clean could grow from the ashes. I saw someone else that night. I said, someone I recognized from the neighborhood, Daniel Hewitt. He was leaving the building with blood on his jacket, with the victim's purse in his hands. But when I told Detective Brennan, he said the department already had their suspect, that Kenneth Morrison had priors, that he'd make an easy conviction, that my testimony would close the case quickly, that my family would be safe if I helped them. You're lying, Brennan said, but his voice shook. Am I? I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I'm going to play something now. A recording from 6 months ago. I had been planning this moment for half a year. Ever since I learned Kenneth Morrison died. Ever since the guilt became too heavy to carry through one more day, one more hour, one more breath. My voice came through the speaker, slightly distorted from being recorded through glass. Detective Brennan, I need to talk to you about the Morrison case. Brennan's recorded voice, cocky, dismissive, ancient history, case closed. What do you want? To clear your conscience 30 years later. My voice. I saw Daniel Hewitt that night. He was leaving the building with blood on his jacket, with the victim's purse. Brennan's voice. Harder now. You testified under oath. You identified Morrison. You swore to tell the truth, and you did. My voice. Because you told me to. You said Hewitt was connected, that he had friends who would hurt my family, that witnesses who didn't cooperate ended up in accidents. Brennan's recorded voice, cold and clear. And they still do. You keep your mouth shut, just like you did 30 years ago. Some things don't have a statute of limitations, and some people don't forget. You think your son is safe now? You think because he's grown up, you don't have anything to lose. I can make his life hell. I can make sure he never practices law in this state. So shut up and forget this conversation ever happened. The tent went silent. The recording clicked off. 200 people stared at Judge Harold Brennan, whose career was crumbling in real time, whose face had gone from white to red to purple. That's entrapment, he whispered. That's a confession, my husband said. He was a corporate lawyer, not criminal, but he knew enough. That's obstruction of justice. Witness tampering, threatening violence against a civilian. That's the end of your career, Brennan. Security was moving toward us now. Someone had called the police. The groom's father was crying, his phone still recording every second, capturing Brennan's face as he realized everything he'd built was collapsing. My son approached slowly, like I was a stranger he'd just met. Mom, did you really lie in court? Did you really help convict an innocent man? I did. I lied in court. I helped convict an innocent man because I was scared. I was terrified they would hurt you, that we would be next, so I became someone I couldn't recognize, and I've lived with that choice every single day since. Kenneth was my brother, the groom's father said, his voice breaking. He was 22 years old. He had a daughter he never got to raise. She's 32 now, and she grew up without a father because of you, because you were too scared to tell the truth. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, impossibly sorry. The words felt pathetically inadequate, like trying to fill the ocean with a teaspoon. But the man who really killed that woman, Daniel Hewitt, he died 5 years ago. The prosecutor who pressured me is dead too. The only one left who knows the truth is standing right here, and he's been threatening me to stay quiet for 3 decades. Police entered the tent, 2 officers, then 4. My husband stepped beside me, taking my hand despite everything. Whatever happens next, we face it together, he murmured. My son stood frozen, his new bride crying against his shoulder, her perfect day ruined by her mother-in-law's confession. Judge Brennan tried to run. He actually tried to run, as if a 70-year-old man could outrun scandal and consequences. But the groom's father grabbed his arm, and security held him until the officers arrived. I need to give a formal statement. I told the police about everything, about the Morrison case, about Judge Brennan, about what really happened 30 years ago. I'll tell you everything. They separated us. Brennan went into one police car, still denying everything despite the recording, still trying to salvage something from the wreckage. I went into another, my husband beside me, already pulling out his phone to call a criminal defense attorney. My son came to the car window. His face looked older somehow, aged by betrayal. Why now? Why at my wedding? Why couldn't you just stay quiet? Because he was going to expose me anyway. Because his father deserved to know the truth about Kenneth. Because I couldn't live with this anymore. I touched the window glass between us. Because you deserve a mother who tells the truth, even when it costs everything, even when it's 30 years too late. He stepped back. I need time to process this. I don't know when I'll be ready to talk to you again. I understand. The police car pulled away. The wedding reception dissolved behind us in a chaos of shocked guests and canceled toasts and abandoned cake. Through the rear window, I watched my son standing alone in his tuxedo, watching me leave. How long have you been planning this? My husband asked quietly. 6 months. Since Morrison died, and I realized I couldn't carry this anymore. Since I understood that some debts can't be buried with the people you owe them to. You could have told me. I could have helped. You would have tried to stop me, hired a lawyer, found a way to protect me. But some things can't be protected. Some things need to see the light, regardless of the cost. We drove to the station. They separated us for questioning. I spent 4 hours giving my statement. Everything. The night I witnessed the murder, what I really saw, how Brennan pressured me, how the prosecutor threatened my family, how I've lived with the guilt for 30 years, how it's eaten at me like acid, corroding everything good until there was nothing left but the lie. When they finally let me go, it was past midnight. My husband waited in the lobby, looking exhausted and old. We drove home in silence. They're reopening the Morrison case, he said finally. They'll investigate Brennan. You'll probably face charges for perjury. You understand that? I know. You could go to prison. We could lose everything. The house, my reputation, our friends. I know. I'm sorry. He pulled into our driveway, turned off the car. We sat there in the dark, in the house we'd built together on a foundation of lies. Why did you keep the recording a secret from me? Because I needed you to be genuinely surprised tonight. Brennan would have sensed, if you knew, he's been a judge for 20 years. He knows how to read people, how to see through performances. My husband looked at me, like I was a stranger. Who are you? The woman I married wouldn't have done any of this, wouldn't have lied, wouldn't have kept secrets, wouldn't have ruined our son's wedding. The woman you married was 27 years old and terrified. She made a choice to protect her son. And then she spent 30 years becoming someone who could live with that choice. I'm what's left after 40 years of lies. Inside, the house felt different. Everything looked the same. The furniture we'd bought together, the photos on the walls, the life we'd built. But I had changed it all by telling the truth. There was no going back to who we were this morning. My phone buzzed. A text from the groom's father. Thank you. Kenneth can finally rest. Another text appeared. My son, I don't know if I can forgive you, but I understand why you did it. Both times, the lying and the truth. I need time. I slept that night for the first time in 6 months without nightmares. The truth was out. The consequences were coming. But the weight I'd carried for 3 decades had finally lifted. The district attorney called the next morning. Brennan was being charged with witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. They found 3 other witnesses who'd been pressured. Kenneth Morrison's case would be posthumously overturned. His daughter would receive compensation from the state. The DA offered me immunity in exchange for testimony. I turned it down. I committed perjury. I deserved consequences. In the end, They charged me, but recommended minimum sentencing, 2 years probation, community service, a permanent record. I would never practice law or serve on a jury. My son came to the sentencing. He sat in the back row with his wife. When the judge read the sentence, he nodded once. Kenneth Morrison's daughter approached me outside the courthouse. "You took my dad from me," she said. "I did. I'm sorry. But you also told the truth. 30 years late, but you told it. My dad would have appreciated that." Judge Brennan got 20 years. At 73, it was essentially a life sentence. Other cases unraveled. Other innocent people were freed. My husband stood by me. My son took longer. 6 months after the wedding, we had coffee. He asked if I'd do it again, lie to protect him. I said yes, and I'd hate myself just the same. "I'm going to be a father," he said. My chest tightened. A grandchild. I keep thinking about what I'd do if someone threatened my child. The right choice isn't always clear. Sometimes you just live with what you decide. He squeezed my hand once, then let go. Not forgiveness, but a start. Some secrets protect no one forever. They fester until they become unbearable. I carried mine for 3 decades. It cost me my son's wedding day, my clean record, and nearly my marriage. But Kenneth Morrison's name was cleared. His daughter got justice. Judge Brennan faced consequences. And I sleep without nightmares now. Was it worth it? Some days, yes. Other days, when I see the hesitation in my son's eyes, I'm not sure. Truth doesn't fix everything. Sometimes it just breaks things differently. But at least the new wounds are honest. Would you have the courage? Would you sacrifice everything to correct a decades-old mistake? I did. And I'd do it again.